Hello and welcome to the Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Global education is facing headwinds from policies framed as national security safeguards. And for the Educational Testing Service, ETS, the world's largest private educational testing and assessment organization, these are testing times. But it is also creating plenty of opportunities. From reimagining standardized testing to AI-driven innovations, ETS is trying to shape the future of learning worldwide. So how is the ETS leveraging cutting-edge technology to redefine educational benchmarks? When cross-border collaborations meet geopolitical friction, can international education forge a third path forward, transcending all these zero-sum paradigms? To discuss these and more, I earlier talked to Rohit Sharma, Senior Vice President of ETS. Okay, first of all, greetings, Rohit, and thank you for engaging with the Chinese community, especially the Chinese student community, in educating and informing them about their options. I think no matter what happens, this educational exchange is invaluable, and thank you for your continued support, for ETS's continued support to the Chinese student community.
Yes, no, thank you for having me, Wang Guan. It's always a pleasure to speak with the media. Our objective here is to help students and their families who are looking to study abroad as a means of achieving their dreams, and we are here to help them.
Great. So during your China trip, which I want to start our conversation with, what key trends have you observed through your engagement with the universities, with the Chinese student community, with educational institutions, especially when it comes to their aspiration to take the TOEFL test to study abroad and vice versa? I mean, a lot of students are studying in China. China is fast becoming a destination of study as well.
Yes, one thing I'll start off by saying, Wang Guan, is that the demand for quality higher education is still very robust. Obviously, with everything happening from a geopolitical standpoint, there's a bit of uncertainty in the horizon, but I'm hoping that's a short-term thing. But Chinese students, as well as their families, their parents, are very keen on finding the right educational opportunity. So a couple of trends that we are observing. Number one, the demand continues to remain strong. Number two, there is an evaluation of which study destination that student wants to go to, partly driven by the geopolitics that is happening, but partly also driven by the cost of education, the proximity to your parents and family. Those things are also playing a role. So we are seeing a demand of, or shift in demand, I would say, of Chinese students studying more near shore to other locations, to China, closer to China.
Talk to us about the Southeast Asian options. What other Southeast Asian countries or ASEAN countries are popular?
Malaysia is another country that is quite popular. In addition to Singapore, Malaysia also has several branch campuses of UK, Australian higher education institutions. And so that gives students and their families a cost-effective option to not just be near to their families, but also get a high-quality degree at a, relatively speaking, reasonable cost option.
Talking about transformation we're in, not just geopolitically, but in terms of technology, with the rapid development of artificial intelligence, what skills, in your opinion, will be essential for aspiring students, for aspiring youth to succeed in the world, not just of tomorrow, but of today?
So in my view, there are two categories of skills I would say are critical for both aspiring students and students of today, but also people who are in the workforce to think about and continue to sharpen and hone. The first goes without saying, AI literacy. And that is so many different things. It means the ability to leverage on AI to make your work more efficient, to leverage on AI to drive product development, to make leverage on AI to drive innovation. So there are several aspects of that. And as all of us know, this is still a rapidly evolving field. So the familiarity with the right kind of tools, how it works with other parts of your technology ecosystem, prompt engineering being one of the skills that we often talk about, those would be very important for students and both current and aspiring students to think about. The other set of skills we call the durable skills, often also known in other words around the world as soft skills. These are skills that, at least for the time being, because nobody knows the future, are hard to be replicated by AI. And these are skills that are related to your ability to communicate well, your ability to have empathy, your ability to collaborate, problem solving, all the human aspects that goes around it. And this becomes all the more important in a rapidly changing and evolving world. As part of durable skills, besides the one that I mentioned, two other skills that comes to mind, especially in a rapidly changing, evolving climate, is your ability to adapt, how fast you can adapt to things. And secondly is your learning agility, because we are in a world where we need to unlearn old things, relearn or
Hmm.
learn new things. And that process will continue to happen at a faster cycle than it has perhaps happened before.
Yeah, because sometimes old habits die hard, right? And the older you get,
Absolutely.
the older we get, one person gets, the harder it could be for them to change, to get away from their stereotypes. But talking about education system itself, from your vantage point, how can educational institutions, schools, public schools, private schools alike, adapt to this evolving technological landscape with AI at its core?
There are a couple of things that educational institutions need to do. Historically, education institutions, whether at the K through 12 level or higher education, one of the criticism has been that they are not preparing students for the world that is out there from a workforce standpoint, from an industry standpoint. And part of that happens because a lot of the uh, education in the schools is still around knowledge, acquisition of knowledge, and
Yeah.
that knowledge translates into skills that becomes useful for an employer eventually when you put it to practice. So whether you are in a high school system or in a college system, I would encourage education institutions to look at how they incorporate experiential learning. Experiential learning could be about applying that knowledge that you have acquired onto projects. Experiential learning could be doing internships with industries, working on real life situations, so that you are starting to build that muscle of gaining that experience, so that when you're entering the workforce or you're sitting in front of an employer and starting to solve real life problems, you understand that there's more than just the theory of it. You have to take in account the HR practices. As an example, you have to take into account labor laws, you have to take into account the finance return on investment requirements, all of those things. You have to optimize for several different things in a real world scenario. And so experiential learning is one part of it. The other thing is, as we were just talking about, new areas like AI, that needs to be incorporated as part of the curriculum for all education institutes, because the sooner you can start to learn certain skills, the better you become in building that capability and muscle.
So, where's the line between memorizing enough to appreciate what's going on, to be able to use AI to serve you and serve your advantage, and learning too much, too much rote memorization?
Definitely, the world is shifting away from that rote memorization. In fact, that has generally been the model in many parts of Asia, where that was emphasized quite a bit. But as you mentioned correctly, that with knowledge being available at our fingertips, proverbially and in real life, that ability to recall is much more easier. So memorization was all about the ability to recall. And at certain point, you do want students, whether they are studying physics for the first time, to understand and be able to explain Newton's law of physics as an example. But memorization of big formulas of how to apply them, those are starting to become obsolete. Instead, the
Yeah.
application of those theories in different situations becomes much more important. And as educational institutions and frameworks, ministries of education around the world, all are grappling with how do we evolve and reform our education system so that it's producing the right kind of learners for the future. And it's the whole concept of how do we future proof ourselves in order to make sure that we remain relevant for the jobs of the future.
Rohit, the next question is about ETS. ETS has extensive experience in leveraging AI for assessments. So, from your perspective, how can we ensure AI is used ethically and efficiently at the same time in assessments?
Yes, ATS has been using AI for several decades, and as you know, the world of AI has been around for some time, and only in the last, I would say, 2 years, it has accelerated with the generative AI coming onto the scene. And so we have used AI for the purpose of test item development, test delivery, test scoring, and also more importantly, security. We are leveraging on AI for doing all parts of the value chain from an assessment company standpoint. We want our assessments to be valid and fair assessments. And fairness means that you remove as much biases from the assessment as possible. And biases come, it is at the end of the day, historically, it's been humans that are writing the test items, right? And now with machine learning and with AI, we can remove those biases. There's a much more cost-effective way to doing that. So the second is to make sure that we are being able to be very open about explaining how we are using AI to either drive a particular construct, what we are trying to measure, and how do we use AI so that it is easily explainable. And the third is around security. We want to use AI. We want to make sure that we are not inadvertently biased against particular type of learners, or like we are talking. And in a test environment, if I were to do a lot of movement, that may indicate potentially that I'm doing something that is not allowed. So we don't want those kind of errors to come into play. And by refining our AI models, we are making sure that none of that happens.
Speaking from the perspective of a four-time TOEFL test taker myself, it's not hard to tell the evolution of TOEFL tests from paper-based to computer-based, the emphasis on the integration of speaking, reading, listening, and writing abilities. What is the future the direction of TOEFL revolution, if any, going forward, and why that should matter to the Chinese test takers?
We are all absolutely and always looking at feedback from test takers as well as institutions that accept these tests. There is the balance of the needs of the test taker as well as the requirements of the institute. So we are constantly looking at that. And from a test taker standpoint, and especially as you think about the Chinese test takers, I would say that Chinese test takers in some ways are not very different from test takers from other parts of the world. The aspiration is that this test allows you to unlock opportunities to higher education around the world. TOEFL is today the most widely accepted English language test around the world. 13,000 institutions accept TOEFL. So part of what we are doing is constantly looking at how do we update our test, keep it modern, both from a content standpoint, but also delivery standpoint. So one of the things, as you might be aware, we not only deliver TOEFL in test centers, but also you can stake it at the convenience of your home. On the other side, for the education institutions, we are also bringing a lot of other features and benefits as part of TOEFL that will eventually help the test taker. So as an example, we recently launched a product called TOEFL Access, which gives education institutions not just an access to your score, particular score, but gives them contextual data of, let's say, Wang Guan is somebody who's taking the test from Beijing. Where does Wang Guan stand with regards to other test takers from Beijing? Is he in the top percentile or is he in the bottom quartile? What other background or information does Wang Guan come from? And eventually, over time, we want to enrich that profile of the test taker so that imagine a future in which an institution, in addition to receiving the score of the student, is now also receiving other relevant demographic as well as contextual data that says, this is an interesting candidate that I would like to talk to. So imagine a future in which the student may not have even applied to an education institution, but the education institutions are now proactively reaching out to you based on the profile that they have been able to gather through the TOEFL Access platform. And you are receiving an invite in your email saying that, hey, we'd like to talk to you about potentially exploring this educational opportunity. So that's where we are heading.
Yeah, that sounds like an exciting world that we will live in soon. Talking about matching supply and demand, what mismatches have you observed between talent supply and talent demand? What are the challenges faced?
Let's start with the talent demand that comes from employers. Here we need to be critical of employers as well, even though they have been the one that are most critical of the supply that is there. Employers oftentimes, when they post a job, you can go and look at it. It's not all of the job postings are very clear in terms of the requirements and that you actually eventually are looking for in a candidate when it comes to talent acquisition. And so one of the things that I urge employers to do is, and now it's possible with so many tools that are there, think about the job, but also break it down not just to requirements that is there, but also the skills that would be associated with that role, and think about how they would end up assessing those skills. And that's where we believe ETS can play a role, especially around durable skills. Like I mentioned, we have a whole portfolio of products through an offering called Future Nav, where employers can assess candidates based on these durable skills. So that's one. On the other side, the supply-demand mismatch that is there is coming from the student or the education institution, which is the main supplier, at least in early years, to the workforce. And that's where education institutions, as I mentioned to you, need to do two things. Number one, they need to make sure that the students are not just acquiring the knowledge, but they're also acquiring the skills through experiential learning, as we talked about. But then equally important is for education institutions to also make sure they are helping students able to articulate those skills. You have done group projects in as part of your education experience. That means you have collaboration skills. You have done an employer project. That means you have critical thinking skills that is able to distill real life data and come up with recommendations. How do you translate your educational experience into language that an employer understands? And this is where we, again, as ETS, can come in and help certify those skills that the student has acquired so that the process of matching becomes much more easier.
Rohit Sharma, a Global Senior Vice President of Higher Education and Workforce Skills at ETS. Thank you so much for being with us. Please come back to CGTN again.